Well, welcome everybody. We're really excited tonight for the West Area Program of Projects. We're have a good agenda. We have some topics we're eager to get your input on, and so we'll just go ahead and get started. As usual, we want to talk about our interpretation. All of our meetings are, let's go back another slide, please, to the interpretation.
Hold on one sec. My computer has gone crazy. Okay.
Okay, here we go. Thanks, Beth. It's okay. All right. As always, we have a language interpretation, and I think most of you know how to do this, but if you don't know how, you need to be on a tablet or a computer. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a globe that says interpretation. Everybody must choose a language for interpretation. So click on that, choose English or Spanish, and that will allow us to provide interpretation for anybody who needs it.
Buenas noches, bienvenidos a todos a esta presentación sobre los proyectos del área oeste de la Colfax. Es un placer tenerlos con nosotros y como muchos de ustedes ya saben, nuestras reuniones son bilingües y pedimos a todo mundo que por favor hagan uso de la interpretación. Si pueden seleccionar el canal de interpretación y seleccionar el canal ya sea en inglés o en español. Es importante que todos seleccionemos un idioma o el otro para poder de esa manera, para que puedan escuchar al intérprete, ya sea interpretando el inglés al español o el español al inglés.
Okay. So we have a wonderful agenda tonight. We're going to cover very quickly an update on the West Area Program of Projects, and then a little bit more on Vision Zero, but we'll be spending most of our time tonight on the 17th Avenue repaving and bike improvements. Just as a reminder, and we also want to respect the input that you gave us a couple of meetings ago. We want to be sure that we're at a pace that allows you to ask questions or make comments. You can also use the chat if you don't want to wait for a break or feel like you can just put a comment in or a question in the chat. Please do so. We monitor that very carefully. So I may not always see your hand up. Also, if you would like to say something or ask a question, so other people are watching that too, but don't, if no one's calling on you and you've been had that hand up for a while, please be sure to just nudge me and we'll be sure to stop whatever we're doing to include you in that conversation. So because we have such a long, we have a full agenda, and we have a lot of things, not a lot of things, but some specific things we want to talk to you about. If you could, we'll just go ahead and start with Beth on the West Area Program of Projects. Oh, here's some reminders. I didn't know about that. That slide just is a good one. Stay on mute so that we're not hearing all your conversations, and then chat window, and also be sure to ask a question at any point. Chat's right there down at the bottom. You'll see that chat icon, so don't hesitate to use it. Thank you.
All right.
Off to you, Beth.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, we will make this just a quick, but I did want to just, I know we probably have some new faces on the call tonight. It's a community-wide meeting. So I wanted to let everyone know what the West Area Program of Projects actually includes. And this is growing. So this is a new effort. Office of Business and Engagement and Community and Business Engagement is hosting this umbrella approach to managing communication on all these projects in your area. And so the idea is that we can be a more consolidated and cohesive way to communicate on everything going on. And so this map just gives you a sense of some of the projects in the area. It may not be complete, but we will continue to work toward that. So the West Colfax Ped and Transit project is one I know many of you are following. Vision Zero improvements are taking place also along West Colfax. The Denver Moves Federal Transit Study on Federal itself. This 13th Avenue is in black. We have some improvements to Bryant that are in completion, and we have some new improvements coming to 13th. We have a host of bicycle improvements in the area. Those are all represented in purple. And we're going to talk a little bit about one of those tonight. So, but just knowing that there's a number coming. The 8th Avenue Bridge replacement is well underway. I think you can actually see some of that taking place today and wraps up later in the spring. And then we had previously the West Colfax NTMP, which was about safety and pedestrian improvements, which is in the blue shaded area, and overlapping with the West area NPI, which includes all of that area, but also extends further south. And that was Eugene Howard's planning effort that many of you are, I'm sure, are aware of as well. So the idea is this is what we'll be bringing to you on a regular basis. We're happy to add projects to this, and we'll keep track of things as we go, including things like Sun Valley and Westbridge Homes and Stadium District and the river and other things that might be taking place here as we go.
And in the chat, if there are particular issues that you would like to be updated on, give us a heads up in the chat room and we'll be able to build those into our agendas to come. So that would be very helpful because we always want to, we're not always sure that we have a cadence, but we want to be sure that that cadence is matching your interest. So please use the chat to let us know if there's any particular issues you'd like to bring up or brief you on in the future. So,
all right.
Okay, thanks, John.
Any questions? Do you see any?
John has just a comment on the frustration about the long circuitous route with the bike trail. So, and we have Steve, I'd like to be included on the Weir Gulch connections. So okay. We'll follow up with you on both of those.
Yes, please just put your exact info or have contact and email. Make sure we have the right Steve, and we'll make sure we include you on those future information. And if there's anything about any particular bike route or the circuitousness of anyone in particular, please expand in the chat so we can take that with us.
So we're going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to update us on Vision Zero.
Great. Thank you, Catherine and Beth. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight. For those that saw this presentation a couple of weeks back, this is pretty similar to what you've all seen, but for the new people, feel free to ask any questions you have. And before I dive in, I do want to introduce myself. My name is Mike King. I'm on the Vision Zero team, and I'm a senior city planner here at Dottie. And yes, we'll be talking about the West Colfax improvements. These are the short-term West Colfax improvements. So here's just a quick context map of where these improvements will be happening, because West Colfax is a long stretch of corridor. But we're primarily focusing on Sheridan, or on West Colfax between Sheridan and Irving. The reason why this location was identified is that it's on Denver's high injury network. It's a high priority area for Dottie's equity index. And there's been a pretty significant increase in crash picture from the last in the last 3 or 4 years. So the overall goal for this project is to install paint and posts and near-term improvements. These improvements will look similar to what the longer-term project with the PED transit project that's coming in about 2024. They'll look pretty similar. There's primarily a painted median and bulb outs using paint and post improvements. And what a paint and post improvement is for those that have seen East Colfax or some of our protected bike lanes, those are really what we consider paint and post improvements, with those flex plastic posts and painted medians on the corridor. The reason why we have identified this project is because of that increased crash picture that I mentioned previously, and I'll show you some data on that. And then but the goal is to complete the design and install and have this completed by the end of Q3 of 2022 of this year.
Mike, can we just stop there to be sure that if there's any questions or comments, we can take those on that information you just gave?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
I think I saw something's coming in the chat. I'm not sure if it's for this yet.
I don't think so. Okay, it doesn't, I don't see anybody's hands up.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody. So where this really came from, again, the crash picture was the biggest piece of this, but there's a lot of different aligned efforts that are also going on at the same time. First and foremost, I'm going to repeat this one a few times today, but that West Colfax pedestrian crossing and transit improvement project is more of the longer term version of this. But the Vision Zero team wanted to come in and install these treatments that are more quick win treatments because we've seen that higher crash picture. If you wanted to hear more about that project, we're not presenting on it tonight, but it will be presented on in future meetings at this meeting. Beth mentioned this as well, the West Colfax and Villa Park NTMP projects that has already been completed. And a lot of the comments that we heard through that was that West Colfax was, people didn't feel safe on it, it didn't feel comfortable, and it didn't feel, it wasn't a great connection for pedestrians. And that's a real goal of this, is to try and really simplify this for pedestrians. The Vision Zero team has done signal retiming on this corridor, including leading pedestrian intervals, which are when you're walking on a sidewalk to a signal. If the signal is red, prior to that signal turning green, the pedestrians will get a walk signal to be able to get into the crosswalk, so that once the green is given to the drivers, they will already be visible in the crosswalk, rather than both getting a signal at the same time, making a pedestrian be put into a driver's blind spot. And then lastly, rapid response is another program through the Vision Zero team. And this is where we go out to every serious and fatal crash that occurs in the city, specifically involving pedestrians, vulnerable roadway users, and then some of our major vehicle crashes as well. And I found that we were coming out to this corridor more and more. So rather than doing spot treatments at specific intersections, we saw that this was really a need for a systemic approach. And that systemic approach will look pretty similar to what East Colfax 2020 improvements looked like.
So Mike, we have a couple comments and questions in the chat, and there was a question about raised, let me go back here, that have raised crosswalks been considered for West Colfax? That's from Lisa.
Let me see. Yes, actually, I've seen that New York Times article that just came out too. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. That has not been considered for this project because this is paint and post. So typically, we're really just using the two paint and flex post treatments because we want to have a quick win implementation. And typically on West Colfax or on our arterials, we wouldn't install raised crosswalks just for it causing more danger to other modes of transportation, transit, vehicle, typical drivers as well, and even cyclists. But on the cross streets, there's always that potential, but it's not in the cards currently. And then I saw a comment from James as well. That's good to know.
Yeah.
We can relay that to the area engineer and let them know that there's one that's not working, one of our pedestrian buttons.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, let me see. Okay. So, you want to go ahead, Mike, then?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we
Okay.
got most of the questions right.
Great. So the next three slides are all going to focus on crashes. Again, a lot of this is kind of repetitive from last time we presented, so I'll go through them a little quicker. But really what we're trying to hammer home here with this slide is over the last 10 years, there's been nearly 25 serious crashes involving pedestrians on this corridor. And as you can see, it's kind of across the board. It's not a specific intersection. And then there's been 5 fatal crashes specifically involving pedestrians. And then in the last 3 years, we've really seen an uptick in these serious and fatal crashes. And this slide isn't just referring to pedestrians, we're talking about all modes of transportation here. We did an analysis for correctable crashes, and a correctable crash in Dottie's terms are areas where we can correct a crash with a engineering treatment. So if something that we do engineering wise could potentially mitigate some of these crashes, we consider that a correctable crash. So in other words, a non-correctable crash is a DUI, a distracted driving, unfastened seatbelt, or misuse of seatbelts. Those are still correctable in a different way, but when it comes to the engineering world, that's not something that we could install a painted median or a bulb out to really affect those types of crashes. And really want to point out on this slide is that of our 131 crashes that we've seen, 12 of which were serious or fatal, which is about a 9% rate of serious or fatal crashes, which is significantly higher than all corridors in the rest of the city.
Questions or comments? Should we keep moving?
There's one more slide on crashes, Catherine.
Okay.
And I think that'd be a
Okay,
good spot.
sorry.
No,
Sorry,
that's fine. And then, so this is just the defined crash map. Again, not going to dig into each and every one of these, but just really want to show you this crash picture primarily focuses on those turning movements that we talked about, especially with the serious and fatal crashes, a lot of left turn crashes that are occurring with serious or fatal injuries, and then mid-block crossings by pedestrians as well that are occurring. And now I will pause for questions. It looks like James does have a question.
Yeah, James?
Yeah, thanks. I was, so like you talk about non-correctable crashes, and like, for instance, a concrete barrier feels like something that is an engineering design choice and would protect against a drunk driver or distracted driver, like in the cases you mentioned. And so when you talk about a non-correctable fatality or collision, so like what I'm just trying to understand for my own, because I haven't heard the sort of terms before, so I'm just trying to understand for myself what the difference
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah, so it's a term that it's very specific, used in when we're talking about like an engineering specific response it's where a physical installation would have a better chance at keeping someone from being able to do a specific movement. So like a painted median is eliminating the left turn movement, or a full-on center median as well, or landscaping, eliminating someone being able to make this left turn. So like this example at Stewart here, there's 2 left turn crashes that occurred there. If there was a median there, those crashes wouldn't be able to occur. Whether someone was drunk or distracted, even with, or completely sober, with that median, that crash wouldn't be able to happen. That's why it's kind of correctable. We do see that most, if not all, crashes are correctable though, because we do see messaging and other strategies for those DUIs, for those improperly used seatbelts and distracted driving. Those are correctable in a different way. It's just not with a physical installation in the ground, typically.
Does that help, James?
I think I sort of understand sort of how it's defined. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Any other, Katie? Did you want to say something, Katie? No?
I think she just went off.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. Comment from Lisa that to share in the chat. Thanks, Lisa, for putting that in the chat. Appreciate it. And Abby's gonna get, and we're gonna get back. Jonathan, Abby can Abby will get back to you on the race crosswalks. Thanks, Jonathan.
And then we do have 2 final slides just to show what these improvements will look like for the short-term project.
Okay.
And again, we can stop for questions as needed. And again, it's really two specific things: paint post bulb outs, and then that painted median. As you can see on this slide, every dot on this map is where a paint and post bulb out will be installed. An example is in the bottom right corner. That's really just what the design view looks like. So anything in blue would be white paint on the street, and the red dots are those flex posts that, again, you'll see on protected bike lanes on East Colfax. The same strategy will be used here. And the benefit for these types of bulb outs is, one, it slows vehicles turning, which benefits not only pedestrians, but also vehicles on the roadway, other vehicles on the roadway. And then it shortens the distance to cross the street for pedestrians as well. As you can see here, this was originally a 34-foot crossing in that bottom corner. And we reduced that by 7 feet by just installing that quick win paint and post treatment. And a lot of these, again, will be kind of reinforced with the later project down the line. And then the last slide here shows our painted medians. And again, just showing the example in the bottom right corner and in the middle there of what these would look like. This is just like you'd see on, Colorado Boulevard, Federal has hard medians, but Colorado Boulevard University, where we have these painted medians currently. And then on the map above is showing where those would be installed. We're primarily or only installing these at non-signalized intersections. We would keep the signalized intersections open to keep controlled crossings available and controlled turning movements available as well. And the one last piece that's going to come from this project, as you can see here, is that we will be painting crosswalks on all of our parallel streets as well to Colfax. And if there is already an existing crosswalk, we'll be refreshing if it's needed. So with that, I'd like to open up the questions. And well, I guess real quick, just the next steps for this again. We're looking to install these Q3 of this year. And later down the line, you will see more about the longer term project and how this will kind of play into that as more of a pilot study in the long run. But yes, feel free to ask away any questions you all have.
So Jonathan, Taylor had sent a response back on your crosswalks. Do you want to make any other comments, or do you want Taylor can get back to you directly on that if you'd like, or we can bring it up in the meeting? What would you prefer?
I think that's fine in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Taylor.
No problem.
Okay, James.
Sorry, I'm like I said in the chat,
No,
I'm
that's
gonna stop
exactly what
trying
we
to
want
understand.
this meeting to be. Please feel free.
I'm wondering whether, is there data to support that just putting paint down lowers fatalities and injuries, or is this just sort of something to see whether it works, and then in the future there's an expectation that we'll put down metal and concrete that actually stops cars? So
Great question. And the answer is both yes and yes. So this is it's called crash modification factors for if something like this is installed, there's an estimate of how many crashes would be reduced. This can be, we don't usually put them in the slides just because they get even more confusing than the correctable crash terminology. So it's something that I can, if you want to shoot me an email, I can send you some examples of that. I'm happy to do that. It's Michael King at denvergov.org. But this will also operate as that pilot study because we do have a longer term project coming down the road here that will have more substantial improvements. But again, because we saw that increased crash picture, we wanted to make sure we got something on the road for the time being until we had fully fleshed out the longer term project.
Yeah, and James, I'll hop in here too. My name is Abby. I'm the designer for this project. And Mike is right, but one thing to note is that many of these crash modification factors speak to the long-term type treatments. So the stuff that you're saying, in like concrete, those kind of more physical materials that prevent certain movements from taking place. So like this slide shows the painted median, we are of course going to be relying heavily on compliance for this too, right? I mean, people can drive over it. It's illegal to do so, but we might still see that happen. But with the long-term project, they'll be bringing in concrete to prevent that from happening.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mike, for the updates. Again, Michael King is it Michael King or Michael King?
Yes, sorry, I said that way too quickly. It is michael.king@denvergov.org. I think mike.king@denvergov.org actually also goes to it. So either or.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Okay, I think we're ready to go on.
Hey, Catherine, apologies. Alan has his hand up, which you may
Oh,
not.
I didn't see it. Alan, hi.
Hi, thanks. I just want to follow up the chat question around the eastern side of the Colfax and Irving intersection. I didn't see any improvements there. And given there was a pedestrian fatality about a little over a year ago there, was wondering if there's any consideration. A lot of kids are going back and forth between the school and the library. There's Section 8 housing on either side. There's a lot of folks that don't have cars that have to rely on that transit there. I was wondering if we could look at potentially both sides of the intersection. Thank you so much. And by the way, this is amazing. Thank you so much for all these great changes.
Great. Thank you, Alan. And Abhi, if it's not too much for me to tag you on that one, I know you're the PM, you know more about this than I do.
Yeah, sorry, I was just bringing up the design here because I wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking inappropriately or communicating false information. You're right, Alan, we're not doing anything on the east or west crosswalks. But one thing we will be providing are a painted bulb out for the southwest corner as well as the northwest corner. So it's a little something to shorten those pedestrian crossings, and that'll also include posts, right, to add as a another barrier between vehicles and peds that are crossing. So it's something small, and we are just mimicking what the long-term efforts has in store as of now. So it'll be changing the lane configuration too, because we're removing that southbound right turn lane, and we're going to change the southbound approach to having a through left right, so just one lane that does all the movements, and then adding that extra painted buffer and the bulb out, the paint post bulb out. So that's hopefully a little bit of good news for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, would love it if we could see some stuff on the northeast and southeast sides as well. Those are the really busy ones where the gentleman was, from our neighborhood was killed last year. So again, any of this is great, but thank you so much.
Their comments on Jonathan has some comments in the chat there, Mike.
I did write those intentionally just to not distract from the sort of timeline of the meeting. I think that they can probably just be logged separately.
Okay, Jonathan, and Mike can get back with you. Thanks, I appreciate the consideration. I know we're trying to acknowledge all of your questions, so we'll get back with you on that one too. And comments. So we're going to move to Karen, and Karen's going to talk about the 17th Avenue repaving and bikeway projects.
Hi all, we've got a ridiculous amount of information, and yet also want you to have a big opportunity to ask questions. So I'm going to go through some of the preliminary information really fast, or even skip some slides so we can focus in on the project information, and we can go back to some of that as needed. I'm just going to hit the highlights. So get ready for a little bit of a speed show. I'm Karen Good from Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. I have Steve, Allison, and Taylor with me today to help answer any questions. And please do put those in the chat and we'll answer as needed. So let's go. So big picture, you've heard a lot of information about safety. We want to make sure we're providing safety on 17th. And thinking about that multimodal safety and providing people with choice so that they are looking at the opportunity to travel in different ways around our city. And we want to encourage more people to walk and bike. So big picture, you've seen that before. Let's get going. Our next slide talks a little bit about our goal with the 15% of walking and biking by 2030 and 0 fatalities. Let's keep a rolling here. The improvements for multimodal projects and increasing mobility options also improve access. We want to make sure that folks have the ability to get to safe routes to move around the city within a short distance from their home. Let's keep rolling. And big picture, people always ask, well, if you have a bike lane, why would you want to do something more than a bike lane or something different? And it goes into this interested but concerned area. Folks that are, Alan, I know you're probably in this highly confident area. John, I know we've got a lot of confident cyclists here. Then we've got some folks that are somewhat confident. We've got a huge number of people, almost 60%, that are interested and concerned. And the more that we can provide, and go to the next slide, the more that we can go to get facilities that really make people feel confident and comfortable. We're at a huge percentage of people, 75% of people who would potentially ride a bike in Denver. And keep in mind that our bike improvements also tend to slow traffic and provide better opportunities for pedestrians. So let's zoom along. And Catherine, please stop me if we want to dive in or if there's anything in chat. So the big thing that we're doing here is that 17th is being repaved. Steve is the project manager for that. And when we repave, we want to be really efficient with our funds and do it once and do it right. So our goal is when we have a paving project to look at what we can do. If we want to change any of the facilities, bike facilities in particular on the street, and get that incorporated into the paving project. So that's why we're here to talk about 17th. And next slide.
So let's just stop there,
Thank you.
Karen, just to be sure if anybody has any questions on these first 5 slides that we produced. Just we're going to go into 17th Avenue and 17th Street, 17th Avenue, I'm sorry, 17th Avenue, and just want to be sure that as we set it up, that there aren't any initial questions.
And it looks like Jonathan had, it's like they're popping up really fast, but Taylor, it looks like you answered a question from Jonathan in the chat. Do you want to share his question and the answer so everyone can hear that?
Sure. Yeah, I think Jonathan was just asking if we can see the speed pillars and raised crosswalks be installed sooner when we, have funding. And I kind of replied that yes, it is frustrating that we can't do them right now. And long term, we're hoping to upgrade our quick build installs of neighborhood bikeways and other bikeways to have these elements. But currently we're trying to build out a safe and connected network across Denver rather than a few more expensive, frankly, bikeways in the fewer parts of town.
And actually the question I saw was, what is a bikeway?
Yeah, what is a bikeway? Oh, that was from James. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So James, yeah, anything. So bikeway is anything from a neighborhood bikeway, which there are very few of right now in Denver, but we're installing a ton in the next 2 years. So that's those sharrows. We have those little mini traffic circles. I think West 35th Avenue is probably one of our best examples right now of a neighborhood bikeway if you've been over there. And then anything up to a 5-foot stripe on the side of the road to a buffered bike lane, which is,
which we'll get into in a minute.
We'll get into in a minute. Paint on the side of the road between the bike lane and the travel lane, and then a protected bikeway, which is including flex posts or concrete or rubber curb to separate people bicycling from the traveling motor vehicles. Answer your question.
You probably did. I see him smiling. Thanks.
It's hard to explain these things in words without pictures.
And we
Let's see
will
if we
have
can-
pictures
let's
soon,
see if-
I swear.
Well, let's move on to some pictures.
Great. So, and I did see that there was a note about snow removal, and that is something that we do plan for when we are looking at those facilities. So jumping in, where are we looking at? We're looking at 17th between Federal and Sheridan. And we're just gonna jump in and talk a little bit more about the detail of the existing conditions there. So next slide. So from Sheridan to Meade, this is the cross section. I want to focus on the picture because I think folks are pretty familiar with the fact that there's a bus going down, but we do have parking on one side of the street and existing bike lanes. And then we're going to pop. So this is pretty interesting in that in the distance between Federal and Sheridan, there are essentially 3 different cross sections. So between Meade and Julian for that short segment, there's parking on both sides of the street, travel lanes with those shared lane arrows that Taylor was just talking about, meaning that bikes and cars share the same space.
Yeah, hold on just a second, let me make sure.
Sorry.
Does somebody want to jump in with a question?
No, I think Donna was just talking to someone in a room.
Cool. So you can see that in the picture. And then our final cross section, existing cross section between Julian and Federal are wide travel lanes with sharrows and no parking. So that's the big picture of where we are now. Somebody looking at these earlier was like, wait, is that what we're recommending? Nope. That's what's there now. So we did an analysis of the volume. The volumes between Meade and Federal are lower than those between Meade and Sheridan. And we'll jump through this and we can always go back if anyone has detailed questions. If we can go to the next slide. We do also have crash data at Xavier, Raleigh, Meade, and Grove. So we took in this information into account, and the next slide should show, if my memory serves correctly, our parking data. So we were focused, we had some older data and we got some new data this February that really focused on residential use of parking. The black line shows that's where there's no parking already. So no parking now, people weren't parking in it. That's good news. The green shows areas where there is low parking utilization, and it goes up in intensity with color. The yellow is a bit higher, so on and so forth. And then when you look at the purple and blue, that starts getting pretty high. So there are some segments right there between Lowell and Julian that are that have higher parking occupancy. And again, those are at 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. So we're trying to target the 5 a.m. targets the residential parking. And let's pop to the next slide so we can start getting into a little bit more detail of what we're looking at doing here.
Karen, do we want to pause for 1 second before we go to the design?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to, I think we have James and John asking about sharrows and how their partners are too uncomfortable to ride on the streets with sharrows. And yes, that is the current existing condition of West 17th, where there are sharrows, is not what we would call a neighborhood bikeway, what I was describing earlier.
Exactly.
So exactly. So the future neighborhood bikeways will include.
Wait.
Am I jumping ahead?
Okay. Yeah, wait, I want to get to the design to talk about that so folks can see the graphics. So we're almost there.
Well, let me maybe pose a little bit of a question that might encompass all of the questions we have. As you've taken this data, because you've just gone over through a lot of data that you've really gathered. So you're looking at parking data, you're looking at a lot of different things. Am I right to say that all of that data has been towards informing the design? So we're not looking at just one thing, we're looking at a lot of things in order to inform the design.
And let's go to the next slide, because I think that's critical, Catherine, and that brings in what you're talking about. We look at the speed and volume of the street to help identify what the best thing we should do for the area is. And so this graphic gives you that idea. We're looking at the intersection of speed and volume. And as I was describing, the east and west side ends of 17th have different speeds and volumes. So when we're looking at the west end, that gives us the information that it's best to look at a separated bike lane or a shared use path. And the east end is in that green zone where we would want to have a bike lane, potentially even with a buffer. So exactly to your point, Catherine, and to your point, Taylor, as well, we use that data and that suggests what we would want to do in the future. So all we've done now is shown you what the existing conditions are and the data. And the next is, this is a pretty good clue as to what we're recommending for the future conditions of the east and west side of a separated bike lane and a bike lane. And we have graphics that show those cross sections.
Karen, I know that the Dottie is extremely interested in getting community comment. How has community comment and engagement played a role up to date? So how is that informed in your data collection, what you're about ready to describe to us? And we know that this is part of that community engagement process.
Absolutely. So I just had 3 check-ins with folks today in our office hours. We have office hours. We did present about a month ago to the West Colfax CAG and got some feedback there. We have been doing outreach through our bike program and the West Colfax planning initiative. So we've got a lot of feedback that's coming in. Some of the concerns that we've heard are about parking. Some of the other concerns are, as we've heard tonight, that a Shero isn't enough and people don't feel comfortable in it. So we have this meeting, and then the day before St. Patty's Day, we'll be out on Sloan's Lake, or depending on weather, at Odell Brewing Company, getting feedback with a pop-up meeting. So that we're not here with a set design. We're here to show people what we're thinking. You can see there's just a big square around east side. We're looking at a bike lane, and then we'll show on the west side, we're looking at a buffered or protected bike lane with horizontal buffer and vertical elements as well. So that's the big picture, but we don't have a finalized design. We want to get feedback from everyone and hear what some of the challenges are so that we can put a design together that works, that's safe, works for the community, and provides for our goals. So that's the big picture.
And if I can just add that your chat comments are really important to us. So you may not want to raise your hand, but we save all of the comments and use it as part of our input and engagement. So please, I know some of you may not want to speak up, but you're really good at typing in the chat. So please continue to use that.
And we do have office hours on this every week. We've done mailings on 17th and the surrounding area for this meeting and our pop-up. Please feel free, if you have any specific questions or just want to talk one-on-one, set up an office hours with me. We've got contact information, or just email me. I think many of you actually have my contact information already from other projects, but feel free to reach out. I did see a couple questions out there as to what a vertical buffer is, what a horizontal buffer is. And I don't know, Taylor, if you want to jump in or if you've already answered it in chat. I know that you're doing a lot on chat. I'm just seeing a few things pop up.
Did I miss anything on chat? Let's see, is it, what is a vertical element?
Yeah.
The plastic things do count.
As well as the curbs.
Yes, so vertical element is just about what it sounds like, anything that is vertical. So that includes unprotected bike lane, those flex posts, rubber curb, or anything up to a concrete curb or like kind of a parking stop type of thing.
And for fun, our vertical elements go within the horizontal buffer, just to make sure you're paying attention.
All right, so let's move on to the improvements you want to describe.
Absolutely. So there was questions, a timely question about crossings. We are looking as to whether there are any pedestrian improvements in terms of crossings that could be added to the project. And we also have worked with CDOT, and this is something that I think is incredibly exciting, as well as Edgewater, the city of Edgewater, so that we will have markings on 17th crossing Federal, on Federal, and on Sheridan. And just was in a meeting with Edgewater and CDOT today, and I think we will get a facility, maybe just Sharrows, but at least something in Edgewater up 17th and perhaps down to Pew in Edgewater, and markings on Sheridan, taking people across Sheridan on 17th. So that is really exciting and innovative, and CDOT said yes, and we're going to be doing in a couple other places on Federal. So we're piloting this in a number of places on Federal and Sheridan as well. So
I think that came from comments here in the CAG, is directly came from them.
Yeah,
as I recall.
asked. I think
Thank
that's
you.
correct.
Yep. Okay.
And then I think we do have our timeline slide, Beth. I think you guys are pretty aware of the project benefits, so we'll bop forward to where we are. We're in our educate and understand so that we can get to design in May. I mentioned that pop-up on the 16th. We'd love to see folks there. And we do have our office hours as well as our email. Finish design in late spring and then install in summer with the paving. And our final slide should be our contact information, which I want to make sure that everyone has. I know a lot of you have probably used the bikes at denvergov.org, our project website, and that's where you can also sign up for office hours. And Pete. So Catherine, I will stop talking.
Karen, always a joy to hear you. But maybe we deliberately saved time. Karen was very generous in terms of cutting back on some of what her presentation was, so because she felt it was really important that we hear from you. I know you're putting a lot of things in the chat, and we will capture those and respond. I know Taylor's doing a great job of following all of those, but are there some, John, you have your hand up. Are there some that you can share with us?
Yes, I'm going back and forth between chat here and elsewhere. What was there was a buffered lane proposed on the west side. What was proposed on the east?
A bike lane.
Just
We're pretty constrained in space there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, if we had more space, we'd do more, but
okay.
This is tied in with paving, so we're not moving the curbs at all.
Right.
So we're doing what we can do with what we've got.
Right. That's fine. I understand that. You know, the 15-foot wide lanes, you got 3 or 4 to use for the bike lane. What about along 17th where the bulb outs are? Are you going to have like ramps that go up to the sidewalk level and back down?
That is a great question, and that is something that we will work through as we get into that detailed design. We know there are going to be some spots that are interesting.
Okay, thank you.
But please stay tuned. That's something that when we come back in May and prior to construction, we may have, like, we could do X or Y. What do you think? What's better for pedestrians? What's better for cyclists? So stay tuned. And
go ahead. Any other questions? Comments?
I did see something on the pop-up, and I did want to provide a little bit of clarity on that. I just want to make sure I'm calling out the spot just right. So the idea is that, yes, we will be at Odell Brewing Company, but we're hoping that the weather is kind of like today as opposed to this coming Saturday. And we want to be on the path at Sloan's Lake at the Perry parking lot area, kind of set up to the edge to catch some people there. We might be both in Odell's and at the path so that we're just catching some people that might not come to a virtual meeting or be aware otherwise. So, and I think it'll be easy to get some extra help to cover Odell's and Sloan's Lake. And if the weather is terrible, will just be in Odell's.
James, you have a question about the first 50 to 100 feet after Sheridan going east. Are there plans to extend the bike lane all the way to Sheridan, across Sheridan? It's the most dangerous part of the grocery hardware run for James and his partner.
Yeah, so James, that's where we are going to put, that's where I was talking about CDOT being okay with us putting green markings across Sheridan on 17th. And then when we cross Sheridan, that's Edgewater, and they're pretty excited about doing something. I don't know that they have the width to do a bike lane. It may be a Shero condition there, but they're exploring what they can do on the east side of Sheridan to connect into the marketplace and down. I was mentioning up 17th to Depew and down Depew to the great place that people go to whose name I can't remember.
That the part on the Denver side is the actual most dangerous part for me. If I'm getting across the street and actually being on that side of the street, usually it's okay, but that like first 50 feet, I've almost been run off the street like 3 or 4 times, and it's like,
gotcha.
You know, it's like whew, every time.
Well, duly noted, and we will dive into that more when we have the detailed design. Thank you. That's super helpful feedback, and thank you for clarifying. I was not understanding that.
Other questions or comments? I love this group. They're making great use of the chat.
Yeah, and if there, I did buzz through a lot of things. So if we want to go back to any slides, let us know. Beth is a master at popping through things. I just wanted to make sure that you all had plenty of time because it's there's a lot of info in here.
Any questions about the data or any questions about at least the planned study area?
And data is so fun. We could talk about it for hours. It is really fun. It's really interesting. And without it, we are nowhere. Oh, it looks like RR has some questions. It looks like the rubber curbs on 23rd, I'm guessing. We are fixing those.
Yeah, Karen, I answered it in the chat. Like normally the flex posts are installed with rubber curbs, but with COVID, we're having supply chain issues. I actually noticed today that some flex posts were installed on the south curb. But yeah, that's why we use flex posts in conjunction with rubber or concrete curbs so that in the winter months, not only snow plows, but also regular traffic can see them. But I assure you, a typical car hitting a rubber curb would not cause that. They were scraped up, unfortunately, by snow plows. And we are working quickly to try to fix that.
Yeah. And Alan knows that I was hoping that those flex from winter bike to work day, I was hoping those flex posts would come in on Valentine's Day for my Valentine's Day present, and Cupid failed me. I did not, the flex posts did not come in on Valentine's Day. Where they, I think we're in last week, but you might have noticed that there was a little weather last week, and I'm not sure the entire shipment came in. It's a tiny bit of weather that made it hard.
Let's see.
And it looks like there's a question about focus in certain areas, east and west of Meade. I missed that in the chat. And
this is a good piece of information as we take a look at the study. So you have this lived experience information that's also really helpful to Karen and the team.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything you're putting in chat. We will dive in. And if you have a specific question that you'd like somebody to respond to specifically beyond what we would do sort of in general website world, please add your email to the question so that we can respond to you directly.
Karen, will you say just one more time when the pop-up is going to happen, just so that we can overkill that message and make sure
Love it.
we really want you to turn out for it. And so let's just do it one more time.
And what I really, really want is for you, you all heard this. I want you all to tell 10 to 20 people each, so they show up in addition to anyone that's just walking around the park. So it's technically, I say 4 because I'll probably be there at 4, but 4:30 to 6:30. And it is at Odell Brewing Company, as well as I say, if the weather is good, that Perry parking lot and the trail entry at the Perry parking lot of Sloan's Lake Park itself. So we want to be able to catch people that just happen to be walking around the lake at 4:30 in the afternoon. And the time change should have happened by then, I think. So it'll be light longer, dark in the morning, but light longer. So, or I could also be wrong. So don't trust me on time change. Do not change your clock based on what I just said. And then
Thanks, John.
And then we'll be at Odell's if weather's bad, or just have an outpost there as well.
So if someone can send the information to Lisa, she'll share it with the neighbors. So that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
And Katie, I think, is on the call from Councilwoman Torres's office. We did get it to council offices. So it'll be going out there as well. So, and a lot of you hopefully got it in the mail. If not, a lot of folks on 17th at least got it in the mail.
Thanks, Karen. I'm going to turn it over to Anthony. Anthony, you want to wrap us up?
Yes, so thank you all, and I apologize I was tardy this evening. I always like to welcome everyone. I know you're very busy, but I want to thank you for joining us tonight for robust conversation. What is most beneficial to the Office of Community and Business Engagement is that we hear from community, and that project managers get to hear directly from you. And your use of chat tonight was really important. And we heard that you prefer presentations where there's many breaks throughout the presentation so that you can get your questions answered, which I know can be disruptive to our project managers who are trying to present the information. And it's always a work in progress, and we're trying to find that balance. So Mike and Karen, thank you for your patience tonight as we kind of maneuver various interruptions that occur during presentations. But this ability for community to have conversations and real live chat, Q&A is just so beneficial. It certainly is to me, and I hope to the community as well. Tonight was a virtual community open house. We host these open houses quarterly for now, I would say. But on a monthly basis, we also have our West Area Colfax Community Advisory Group, our CAG, and they meet every month. The same first Thursday of the month. I think we are going to move the times. We tried 5 p.m. and I think that was disruptive to businesses. So I think we're going to have the meeting start at 6. They'll be from 6 to 7 p.m. I'm going to put in the chat our webpage for the West Area Program of Projects. On Beth's first slide, when she was describing all of those projects, all of those are contained on that webpage, as well as schedule for all of the projects and the timelines. But it's www.bit.ly/West Area Projects. And also on that page is an opportunity if you want to receive updated information on all of the information that's being shared with the CAG, all of the presentations. You have the ability to sign up. And I will add you to our CAG email distribution list. And I will also include my email if you'd rather go that route and just send me an email and say, yes, please add me to the CAG. I do want to share with you also, I do not share your contact information with anyone. So you will not all of a sudden be receiving, multiple emails from resources you had no idea that you don't have any idea. Why are they emailing me? Because I live in that world and it's quite frustrating. So I make the commitment to you that if you do sign up for my email distribution list, I do not share it with anybody. So our next meeting where we'll be gathering after the bike pop-up event on March 16th will be the first Thursday in, April already. Can we believe we're saying April? But Thursday, April 7th, from 6 to 7 will be our next opportunity. Additionally, I'll try to get your contact information. I did at least capture your names, but the recordings in both English and Spanish will be posted on that webpage, as well as will the PowerPoint presentation that was shared with you this evening as well. And Catherine, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Anthony. Well, thank you, everybody. We're right at 7:01, so I kept you a minute late. Won't keep you any longer. I hope you have a wonderful weekend upcoming. I know snow is coming, so stay warm. Good night, everybody.